Okay, is the Maises also? It's the two parshas that we're going to be reading this Shabbos. Tazria and Metzorah deal with the halachas of Tumah and Tara, purity and impurity, obviously in the spiritual sense. And this is something that we don't and can't understand. As the Rambam writes in the end of Hilchis Mikvois, that Dovar Borur Vigolui, it's clear and it's apparent. Shahatumois v'hatarois gezerois hakosuvhein. It's a it's a decree, yeah, the scriptural decree, yeah. V'hein on midvarim shedaitoi shel odam machra'atoi. It's not something that a person's understanding could determine. I mean, what's yet tame, what's not tame. Ve'harei hein michlal hachukim, v'chein atvilim and atumis. Michlal hachukim hu she'ein atume tit oitzoyo. I mean, the impurity is not mud or filth that shetavor b'mayim. Elo gzeres hakosavu. And then the Rambam adds v'hadover tolui b'kavonas halev, and he goes on. Yeah, it's the Rambam in this context also says in the end of Hilchis Tmura, the Rambam says about chukim that afal pi shekol chukei haTorah gzeiros hein k'moishe biyarnu b'seif Hilchis Meila, but nevertheless ro'ui lehisboinein bohem v'chol sha'ato yochol litein loitam tein loitam. So the Rambam says that it is fit to meditate upon the chukim, and whenever it is possible to give a tam, we should try to do so. So the Rishonim tried to give timim even in these areas of chukim which don't lend themselves to timim. It has been said that taimei hamitzvahs are really to be understood in terms of tam. The word tam means a reason, and it also means a taste. In other words, a person should develop a taste in mitzvahs, and it's not like we're saying that the mitzvah is for this reason, but we're developing a certain connection with the mitzvah and with and a meaning that the mitzvah can have for us. Yeah, it's interesting that, the Rishonim try to give timing for mitzvahs. Today, I mean, it's dafka the irrational that has religious appeal. Things that make sense. I mean, people don't, it doesn't turn them on, b'chlal. Like, I mean, negelvas, no, they can handle, but I know, I mean, cheating in business, I mean, that's davar sichli. It doesn't have a religious appeal. But that's all because everything is upside down. But the way it should be is that Kol mashat yochoy litein loitam tein loitam. So so Tumah and Tara. It's interesting. The parasha begins with a pasuk with Tumas Leido. Tumas Leido. The pasuk says, "Isha ki Tazria v'yoldo zochor v'toma shivas yomim kimei nidas dvoiso titma." The Torah compares her tumah to the tumah of a nida. The emes is that it's hard for us to understand why giving birth should bring about tumah. Not only is it hard to understand, but it seems to be counterintuitive because tumah is usually related to death, and birth is about creating a new life. In other words, the Avi voice tumah is a mace. Is a mace. He's the Avia voice of all tumas. Which means that all tumas belong to the same general category. The tumas nevela also has to do with death. And tumas Metzorah maybe has to do with the fact that a Metzorah, Chazal say, is choshuv kemes. The Kuzari, if he also says in Maimer Beis Ois Samach that Tumah and Tara is chukim, but he says that all tumas have to do with death. he says that the Tumah Zov connects with the concept that the discharge of the Zov had in it the potential for generating life, and therefore the discharge leaving the body is in a sense, in some lesser manner, a form of death, and therefore the Zov is Tamei. He says, Kvar Amarti L'cho, says the Kuzari, she'ein erech bein sichleinu ubein ha'inyan ha'eloiki. V'roi shaloi nitrach levakesh ilois ele hagdoilois v'hadoim lezeh. Aval ani oimer, acha bakoshis ha'mechila, that she'efshe she'tia tzoraz v'azivois tluyas b'tumas hames. Ki amo v'su ha'hefsed ha'godol, v'ha'ever ha'metzorah kemeis. וכן הזרע הנפסוד, כי יש בו רוח חיים טבעי, ובו ההכונה, ליאוס טיפס דם ממנו יזהווה האדם. הפסדו של זרע זה, אם כן, is noiged לתכונס החיוס ורוח החיים. Okay, so all tumas have to do with death, but the tumas yoledes Rebbeinu Shalom is why is she tamei? I mean, she just created life. Why should the yoledes be tamei? So, it's you're talking that the pshat is like this. It's true that she brought about a new life, but in the sense of accomplishment of having done that might limit her desire to accomplish even more. In other words, the Gemara says in Nidar Daf Lamed Aleph that Shoalu Talmidov es Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Mipnei ma omro toire yoiledes mevia korban, amalohen b'shoshe koiras leileid koifetzes v'nishbas, sheloi tizokek lebaalo lefichach omro toire tovi korban. So this can be understood in the sense that when a woman gives birth, she's depleted of her desire to create new life. The sense of accomplishment of having actualized the potential to create future life could diminish her desire to do more. In this sense, so birth itself can be seen as a loss of potential life for the future. When the Emma says that there's a very interesting thing about a chumrah that we find in Tumas Yoledes that we don't find in any other Tumah. In other words, in all Tumas there's a din of a tvul yoim. A tvul yoim is the pshat that even after your toivul, you still have a certain level of tumah for the rest of the day. In other words, a kohen is osur lechol bitrumah until heref shemesh, until shkiyas achama, until seisek aychov. So that's the din of tvul yoim. But by a yoiledes, we have a concept of tvulas yoim oroich. Tvulas yoim oroich. A yoiledes zochor, she's toivel after 7 days, but she remains a tvulas yoim oroich until the 40th day. A yoiledes nekeva until the 80th day. So the tvulas yoim oroich means that there's a certain residual tumah that remains with a yoiledes long beyond what it remains with a typical tomei who has a din of tvul yoim, not a yoim oroich. So what is this about? The b'chlal the din of tvul yoim, there's a interesting what's the idea of tvul yoim? So there's in the Hakdama of the Eglei Tal, he brings in the name of his father. He writes like this. He writes, Ra'isi l'kayim ben yechabed av. I want to give honor to my father. Lichtov b'psicha sifri, dover masha shomati, mikvoid adoni avi mori v'rabi zatzal b'pirush mishnah rishoyne de brochis. Me'emis ha'koyen hashma ba'arovin, mishosha ha'koyanim nichnosin lecho b'trumosan. Ve'einoi muven hatliya zeh bazeh. In other words, the Gemara Taka says, Milsa Gavurcha Kamashmala. Me'emisai Koyanim Nichlosim Lecha B'Tzruma. That is Mishas Seisek Erchovim. But nevertheless, he's wondering why in the world did Rebbe connect Kriyash Mashel Arvis with the Shosha Koyanim Nichnosim Lecha B'Trumosan. V'Omar Adoni Ovizal. The Inyan Herev Shemesh Shehitzricha Torah. why did the Torah say that until Heref Shemesh, he's also Lechel B'Truma? The Af Achar Shetoval, because even after he was Toivel, Mikol Moker Me'achar Shehoyo Tomei Ba'oisa Yoim, since he was Tomei on this day, Nishar Boy Roshim Hatuma Kol Hayoim. Some Roshim, some mark, some Roshim of Tumah remains all day. Ubeheref Shemesh Shebo Yoim Acher, it's the beginning of a new day. Shaloi Hoya Boy Tumah, a day that never had Tumah. Nistali Gam Harishima, that's when that residual Tumah is gone. And the kasher hu betumah, just like this is true about tumah, kain hu leumasai b'kedusha. So also this is paralleled in the world of kedusha. Kishemekabel olav oil malchus shamayim shachris. Af she'achar kach ein machshavta b'zeh. The rest of the day he's not thinking about that kabbalas oil malchus shamayim. Mikol mokom nishar boy roishem kabbalas oil malchus shamayim kol hayoim. There's still a roshim of that Kabbalah Samach Shemayim. U'ba'erev, shuhu yoim acher, nistalko gam harishima. V'tzorech l'kabel ol malchus shemayim michodosh. Ad kan divrei pi chochom. Yeah, that idea of a tvul yoim is that there's a certain siman, a roshim of the tumah that remains, and just like there's a roshim of the tumah that remains, there's a roshim of the kedusha that remains, and therefore it only becomes necessary to learn Kriyas Shema again after the Heref Shemesh of the Kriyas Shema Shel Shachris. Yeah, so this is the idea of the typical Tvul Yoim. But how did we get to the idea of a Tvulas Yoim Oroich by the Yoiledas? So it could be that impression that's left over by the Tumah, Taka goes away by the end of the day. But and that's meaning that every Tumah, as we're saying, is the Heder HaChaim, is the loss of life, is death, and that exposure to death, I mean, it defiles me. But after I'm Toivel, there's it's full Yom after the Roshim is gone when the night comes. But the Tumah of Yoiledes, being that it's because she self-actualized and she fully expressed the potential. So in order to become reinvigorated and in order to become recharged and to restore that desire for creating life, it takes much longer. And therefore, she's a Tvulas Yoim Oroich. So, listen, this is something that one needs to be aware of, that whenever we achieve a goal, I mean, we must set a new goal. You shouldn't rest on your laurels and relying on your previous success, but continue to strive for new levels of accomplishment. And that's probably one of the messages of Sfiras Oimer, because just imagine, for hundreds of years, we were waiting to be liberated from Mitzrayim. And finally, the day came. And we were Zoiche to be Yoitze me Avdos Lecherus. Yeah. But immediately, the Rebbeinu Shalom tells us, Usfartem lochem mi mokros ha-Shabbos. Sheva Shabbosos tmimois tiyena. Ad mi mokros ha-Shabbos ha-Shvius Baruch HaMishim Yoim. Now you have a new goal. I mean, you don't feel accomplished. Don't feel it's taka niglo aleya melech malche amlochim hakodesh baruch hu. You taka reached a tremendous madrega, and it's taka all your hopes came true. But once that happens, it's time to set a new goal, and therefore now the goal is so we should never feel, never become depleted of our life energy by accomplishing our goals, but rather we should always be mischadesh and go mechayel el choyel. Okay, I think that will be it for today. Und weißt doch, es ist abhängig von Muet HaMachzik es Amarube. Sometimes, you do too much and you become depleted. So, it's sometimes, overexpression can bring about depression. And therefore, sometimes a little suppression is helpful because it keeps the rotzen alive and the want for more. The want for more. Rabbi say, ich wünsche euch alle a guten Shabbos.